Live from the 17 News studios, this is the 5th District Supervisor Debate, sponsored by Bakersfield Pest Control. Now, your moderators, Jim Scott and Eitan Wallace.
And good evening to you, and thank you for joining us for tonight's candidates debate featuring, well, 4 of the 5 candidates who want to represent Kern County's 5th Supervisorial District. The 5th District encompasses much of East and Southeast Bakersfield. When the 4th District was redrawn under court order in 2018, the new boundaries carved the communities of Arvin and Lamont out of the 5th District and put them in the 4th District.
All right, so let's introduce you to the candidates now. Leticia Perez is the incumbent, and as you see, she committed to this debate, but she's not here. We have no explanation for her absence. Ben Valdes is 35 years old and a realtor for Miramar International. He was born and raised in Bakersfield. Mr. Valdes is single and has no children. He graduated from Foothill High School and holds a degree in philosophy with concentration in law, justice, and social policy from Cal State University, Bakersfield. Ronnie Cruz is 57 years old, single with 2 children. Mr. Cruz is a sales account manager for El Popular, the county's only all-Spanish newspaper, and he's a contractor for the Union Pacific Railroad. Mr. Cruz is a graduate of Roosevelt High School in Los Angeles and holds an Associate of Science degree in computer science from National Technical Institute. Ricardo Herrera is 41 years old. He's single with no children. He's a resident of the city of Bakersfield. Mr. Herrera is a restaurant owner and a trustee on the Greenfield Union School Board. Mr. Herrera is a graduate of the University of California, San Diego, and also holds a master's degree in history from San Diego State and a doctorate degree in history from the University of Arizona. And David Abbasi is 41 years old. He is single with no children. He is an entrepreneur and coordinator, and he is a former cannabis dispensary owner and advocate for several local marijuana ballot initiatives, past and present. He's also a political organizer. Mr. Abbasi is a graduate of El Camino Real High School in the San Fernando Valley, also Pierce College there in Woodland Hills.
All right, gentlemen, candidates have been apprised of the rules for tonight's debate, and we start with opening statements, and by a draw of the cards, Mr. Herrera will go first. 60 seconds, Mr. Herrera, your opening statement, sir.
Well, thank you, Jim. I want to first begin by prefacing my opening statement by thanking KGTV for actually doing this service to the public, for providing us a platform in which to manifest our concerns as to where the district is today and where we want to take it in the near future. I decided to run for a plethora of reasons. The district, first of all, there are 3 reasons. First is lack of safety. Second is lack of economic development, and third is our lack of infrastructure. And in terms of safety, the main thing is that people feel very unsafe in the streets of Bakersfield at this point. You know, many statistics point out that over 6,000 cars were either vandalized or stolen in the county of Kern just very recently. That's almost 1 car per hour that actually gets stolen. Our streets are crumbling, our roads, no quality of jobs are being developed. And so I'm concerned about the whole quality of life in the Kern County, especially here in the 5th District.
All right, very good, sir. Thank you, Mr. Herrera. Ben Valdes, your opening statement, sir.
Good evening. Thank you.
Evening.
I want to thank, of course, KGT for hosting this debate tonight, and I want to thank you, of course, moderating. But most importantly, I want to thank the viewers at home who've taken time tonight to tune in to actually hear what we have to say about issues that are pressing on all of us. Here in the 5th District, we face many issues. Many, many issues. Unfortunately, they haven't been addressed. We definitely need to start addressing a lot of the crime rates that are happening. We definitely are going to, excuse me, sorry about that.
That's all right. Go ahead.
So what we need to do is actually start getting tough on the issues here at heart. Obviously we have a supervisor that doesn't care enough to come here today. What is that saying about our district? What kind of leadership are we having? That's unacceptable behavior. And because of that, that's why we need change.
All right, Mr. Valdes, thank you very much. Ronnie Cruz, your opening statement, sir.
Hi there, I'm Ronnie Cruz. I'm the founder of Feed It Forward. For 18 years, we've been feeding the less fortunate, the homeless community here in Bakersfield. And I would like to thank Channel 17 for all the good they do in the community, for all their barbecues, which I always attend. Thank you. I appreciate, the community appreciates all Channel 17's help, with your endeavors to help us. And I'm running for supervisor because in my railroad work, I traveled throughout the United States. And everywhere I would go, people are curious and say, where are you from? I go, I'm from Bakersfield, California. And they would ask me about Buck Owens and why is there so many murders. So I'm running to stop the killings here in the 5th District.
All right, Mr. Cruz, thank you. David Abbasi, your opening statement, please, sir.
I'm a native of Bakersfield, and I love my hometown. When I saw local jobs being lost and corruption in Kern government, I decided to run. We need to bring ethics to Kern County. I am educated in law and politics. As a successful entrepreneur and coordinator, I have experience managing large groups and navigating extraordinary challenges. I wrote term limits for the ballot for the Board of Supervisors, and I'm in the process of qualifying that for this November. Under our current leadership, we have less access to health care, we have increased crime, county employees haven't had raises in over 10 years, and a homeless disaster. Our law enforcement is the most dangerous in the nation, with things like falsifying reports and retaliation being common. Our prosecutorial misconduct in the DA's office and supervisors taking bribes. Enough is enough. We need genuine people with real solutions. Kern County deserves better.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. My first question of this debate was going to be directed at Supervisor Perez, and it involves the plea agreement she reached with the Kern County District Attorney's Office back in January, a plea agreement for the charges filed against her and the conflicts of interest that she had in 2017 when she cast her vote to legalize and regulate recreational marijuana in Kern County. My question to her would have been, does she have anything to say to the voters of Kern County tonight? She's not here to address that question. I put the question to you, her absence here tonight. What does it mean to you? Let me start with you, Mr. Herrera.
What it speaks to is her audacity to think that she's already, she's going to win re-election. But the reality is that we need better leadership at the county level, and her lack of being here, it shows that she's not caring about the people of the 5th District. And I would venture out to say that those dispensaries caused much problems to many people in the surrounding communities in which they were residing. And so I'm all for the restrictions, the moratoriums that have been placed on those cannabis dispensaries. Now, when we run for office, it's obviously a lot of people come with a lot of baggage. We don't elect saints to be holding office. But once you get elected to office, there's a degree of higher standard to which you must be held to, and more professionalism. So in that sense, I think she should have been disqualified. To begin with, I think her 4 colleagues on the board should have actually voted her out of office.
Mr. Abbasi?
Well, Jim, I'm not exactly sure what the reason was. We can only speculate. But sure enough, she's not here. And that is an indication, and I echo some of those comments and concerns that Mr. Herrera brought up. I think that, in general, she got a slap on the wrist, and we should be more tough on public corruption. And when it comes to things like this, it sets a bad example for others to do misdeeds and to engage in corruption as well.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cruz?
Well, I was very disappointed with Leticia Perez's actions on taking bribes, and that's not honesty and integrity. To hold an office is an honor, and you don't betray your constituents by betraying their trust. I just felt that was wrong and very, very wrong. If she was in the corporate sector, if you steal $5 of gas, you're terminated.
Just for the record, she was not ever accused of taking bribes. She was accused of not properly reporting income that came from special interests tied to the marijuana industry during the run-up to the vote in 2017. So I just want to make that correction.
I still want to know if before the election, is she going to pay on her fines, or is she going to do her community service?
She is in the process, and I believe she has made a payment of $30,000 to the Bakersfield Homeless Center as part of the terms of the dismissal of the charges if she fulfills the full terms of the dismissal. This is under the plea agreement with the District Attorney's Office. And I've been told that she has made that payment of $30,000, which was the amount of money she received from 2 special interests within the cannabis industry. Mr. Valdes, your thoughts on the absence of Ms. Perez tonight, sir?
Well, I think it's an interesting question, Jim, because first of all, the courts have ruled what they ruled with her. So we now have her, the jury's still out with the public. That is who's going to ultimately decide her fate as a supervisor. Literally, if she doesn't want to be here, that's fine. That's her choice. Some people think that they just have it that way. But unfortunately, we have people that are hurting in our district. We need help. And once again, she's not present. So, I mean, that speaks paramount in itself. It's paramount in itself, the amount of people that we have on the stage today running against one incumbent. If I was ever in that position, trust and believe I would resign just out of pure embarrassment. That's just my opinion on that.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Valdes. Let's move on now to the issue of cannabis. Supervisor Perez was absent on October 8, 2019, when the Board of Supervisors voted to place a county-drafted initiative on the March ballot legalizing the sale of medicinal marijuana in Kern. Now, we know this today as Measure E. If you had been there that day, how would you have voted on that agenda item, Mr. Abbasi? Let's begin with you. 60 seconds, sir.
I would have voted no because it was a setup, it was a monopoly for an exclusive group.
All right.
Thank you. Mr. Cruz?
I would have voted no.
Why,
And
sir?
why, sir?
Because, I don't know, people like our grandkids will look at us and say, why are they fighting for this marijuana just like prohibition? And we will, the American people will get over it one day.
Thank you very much. Dr. Herrera?
I would have voted no because I heard that the county of Kern was considering putting certain restrictions as to how many monopolized, saying only certain amount of dispensaries can operate. I'm more in favor of that kind of measure rather than saying that it's open. I'd rather see the county more strictly regulated.
Okay, and Mr. Valdes?
We have two measures on the ballot. We have D and E, correct? When we look at E, we see that it's a little bit more structured. D appears to be, and forgive me if I'm wrong, they have some logical inconsistencies that I see within that measure. I've read it thoroughly. And what I see is that D, as much as it promotes that it's a monopoly that the government's actually doing, when we look at D, that appears to be more of a monopoly than anything. So if you read that D measure really thoroughly, you'll see that the things that they're accusing the board of actually doing is that's what it seems like they're monopolizing on. And I think voters should actually be really informed and read that measure thoroughly, because I think there's a lot of misleading information in there, and it might be actually some logical inconsistencies that you might find a little concerning.
And in terms of Measure E, how would you have voted, sir?
I think out of both of them, Measure E is the most structured one. It has the best regulations. It provides for us to have regulation on these marijuana things, so that way that you don't have 100 of them reopening up in your neighborhood again. You also have the opportunity to have the board actually regulate these other Measure D. What Measure D is going to do, it'll let all the old ones open up, right? So what does that say? Thank you.
All right,
Sorry.
thank you.
Gentlemen, let me just follow up there and let's get you all on the record here. Recreational adult use marijuana is one thing. Medicinal marijuana is another thing. Fewer communities in California have gone with all-out regulation and acceptance of adult marijuana, but what about medicinal marijuana? More and more communities are allowing medicinal cannabis dispensaries to operate legally. Where do you stand on the issue of medicinal marijuana? And then we'll move on to other topics. Let me start with you, Mr. Valdes.
I think medicinal marijuana is absolutely, I mean, the people of California have spoken. That's exactly where it's at. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, if that's the law, then that's the law.
Okay. Mr. Herrera.
For me, it's one thing what the people of the state of California have said, whether it's San Francisco or LA County, but rather it's the people of Kern County. What are the people of Kern County saying? If they don't want it, the government should just back off and let the voters decide if they want to put it on the ballot, they want to pass it or not. But I don't think the 5 board supervisors should be dictating what should and should not be allowed.
Mr. Cruz?
If somebody's in pain and that relieves them and it helps them and they could eat better or get their appetite back, I'm for it.
Mr. Abbasi?
Well, the people have spoken, but this is Kern County, so we have to take baby steps here. I think everyone can agree, the majority of people agree, medical cannabis is viable and it's necessary, and they approve it. The 2 measures on the ballot are both medicinal cannabis measures only, not for adult use. And regarding Measure D, it does not allow anybody just to automatically reopen. There has to be a certain set of criteria met before they could apply for a permit, so not anyone can reopen. And it does grandfather in dispensaries. It's something that's commonly done. It takes the discretion, however, away from the county from being able to pick and choose who gets a permit. And that's a point of concern we've had throughout the decade.
Can I chime in on that?
Certainly.
I just want some clarification on that because I think since Mr. Bossi is so familiar with that measure, it allows for the old dispensaries to open up, correct? I believe?
The ones that were in business
were in
prior to
business prior,
2018,
correct?
right? Yes.
So if they're the only ones that are able to open up and there's no fair competition, isn't that what we call a monopoly?
No,
You may respond, sir.
that's called bare bones minimum with what we need. We can always expand and look at other things and even adult use in the future, but we need this. This is actually the county's regulations with more restrictions.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to move on to other topics.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
Thank you. Open question, candidates. Is the 5th District better off now than it was 8 years ago when Supervisor Perez first took the office? Mr. Abbasi, I see you shaking your head. We'll start with you.
Well, Eitan, as I mentioned in my opening comments, we have increased crime, and that's something that is just on a long list of things. We have roads in disrepair, insufficient lighting, you know, along with the other problems that we have. But sticking to just the crime, your question was about the crime?
Or it was just
Or in
about,
general?
is the district better off 8 years later than when Supervisor Perez first took
No,
office?
it's not. It's continuing to decline and deteriorate. We have homeless disaster. We have county employees who haven't had raises. And of course, the crime, which is rampant at this point. We need to do more to do things like pay parity, to make sure that our deputies are paid what other counties are paying. We need to retain our deputies so that we can have public safety. Things like that, for example, are one of the issues that I have and plans to fix it.
Mr. Valdes.
Well, Eitan, thank you for taking my campaign slogan there. I like it. No, but our district is not better off today than it was. We have not had proper representation in this district since Michael Rubio left office. That was an aggressive supervisor. He got things done. And since he's left this office, it's been on a continuous downhill spiral. And unfortunately, we've had 8 years of absolutely nothing to show for it. It's kind of embarrassing. We have people out there hurting. We need people that need help. We need better jobs. We need opportunities. But in order for those opportunities to come to fruition, we need to make sure that we change our leadership. Leadership that is driven for us, by the people, for the people, and not necessarily for self-interest or self-profiting.
Thank you. Dr. Herrera, is the district better off now than it was 8 years ago when Supervisor Perez first took office?
No, I think it's actually even worse. I think I would disagree with Mr. Valdes what he said about since Michael Rubio was in the we had great more success. I lived around in the area for over 30 years, passing the years of Michael Rubio, and there has been just deteriorating over for so many years. We have lack of economic development. The University of Wisconsin at Madison, the Public Health Institute just ranked us 52 out of 58 out of all of the counties in California as one of the worst quality of lives that we have. Water quality, air, like access to quality to trails for people who want to exercise, access to quality school districts. So we're in a terrible situation. To be 52 out of 58 is an embarrassment, and not only for the incumbent, but even for all other, for Scribber, Magger, Gleason, all the others. Something should have been done about that for years ago. So we've been suffering for many, many years, not just the last 8 years.
Thank you. And Mr. Cruz.
No, everybody knows what I stand for. There's too many killings in the 5th District and in Kern County. In the 5th District, 80% of the murders happen in the 5th District. And I could pull up the statistics on it. Plus, our roads are terrible. We need a street light on Bernard and Haley. Just today, I seen a crash right there. There's crashes every week when I go through there. We need a street light there badly. We need lights, street lights where I live, and I live in the good part of the 5th District, and we still don't have street lights. There's a lot of things that have to be cleaned up in our area. We got to help out the homeless, where right now, if we brought in little, like in FEMA, little houses for them, we can better the 5th District where they have somewhere to stay, like I seen in North Carolina, where I didn't see no homeless people out there, and I'm serious. I didn't see no carts or no homeless people.
All right, gentlemen. Let's question, if you will, on homelessness, please. Sheriff Donnie Youngblood has proposed a law and order strategy to address the criminal and the substance abuse elements within our homeless population. Not all of our homeless people, obviously, are criminals or thieves or vandals, but for this element of the population, the sheriff suggests that we seek the stiffest sentences possible from our Kern County Superior Court bench for repeat offenders convicted of misdemeanor crimes such as vandalism and theft, and of those repeat offenders who happen to be homeless and have a substance abuse disorder. Enroll them while incarcerated in a medically assisted detoxification and rehabilitation program. Does that make sense to you as one strategy as we combat homelessness? Mr. Herrera, Dr. Herrera, let me start with you, sir.
It makes sense, but my concern would be accountability. Oftentimes, a lot of cities and counties have a lot of issues regarding, you mentioned the case in point, the homelessness, but oftentimes just throwing more money at a problem, let's say, will solve it. And so my concern would be, how are we going to oversee the disbursement of those funds, whatever amount of money might be coming in to help those people? Because I agree with you, Mr. Scott. The homelessness issue, it's a crisis. There's not a silver bullet that'll take care of it.
Right.
So we got to attack those, incarcerate those that need to be incarcerated, that are violent on the streets, that we see breaking windows in downtown Bakersfield at local restaurants. And then there are those that are falling on hard times because of income inequality in the district, who you see them at your local Walmart, living out of an RV. And then there are those that actually need some assistance. And so we got to attack this on different fronts. And it's going to take a community whole-wide effort to try to resolve this issue. Not just one individual can solve this.
Mr. Cruz, your thoughts on that?
Well, I wouldn't want people just picked up for vagrancy. If you're, be like Rambo movie, where they just took Rambo in because he was wanderer. I wouldn't want something
These
like
are
that.
people that have been arrested and then convicted within the court system, issued sentences to be incarcerated for repeat offenders who are committing crimes of theft and vandalism, among others, who are also, when it's determined that they have a substance abuse disorder, be enrolled in a medically assisted detoxification and rehabilitation program while they're incarcerated, serving their time.
Shouldn't they put them in programs before they go to and try to find the issues why they're homeless? Or some of them are just mentally ill and they throw bricks through the window because, or we have veterans out there that have been through shell shock and stuff like that that are committing these crimes. Should we put them away? They might as well bring back what did they call where they mental institutions like they used to in big mental institutions and just keep them in there so society wouldn't have to bear with them? No, we got to help these people somehow, some way. The community effort has to help them because I see a lot of homeless and I have a lot of homeless friends and I don't want nobody to go that route.
Mr. Abbasi, your thoughts?
Well, Jim, if you're committing a crime, you should be locked up. That's just simple as that. Well, my concern is that we end up jailing homeless people simply for being homeless. We have the responsibility to address homelessness as a moral, economic, and quality of life imperative. We can, instead of jailing the most vulnerable Americans, we should use the housing first approach, which has allowed the city of Houston, Texas, to decrease homelessness by 54%. It combines rehabilitative support, including psychiatric, medical, and drug rehabilitation, and this type of approach has shown faster exits from homelessness and longer time spent in permanent housing.
All right, sir. Thank you. And Mr. Valdes, your thoughts on this proposal?
Well, we got to be realistic about homelessness. Okay, it's an issue that's affected our state on a state level, and it's been a situation since I was probably in diapers, to be honest with you. There's no simple solution to such a complex issue. But what I can do for you as supervisor is that we can be diligent. We can actually be ahead of the curve, because if not, we're going to end up like San Francisco or Los Angeles. We have to be ahead of the game, because if we're not, we're going to get left behind. And the problem with that is we have the Boise Law. Boise Law prevents people from getting arrested. If the government cannot provide a place for you to sleep, they will arrest you.
That's correct.
So that's kind of a little loophole that we have there. That now that we have this low barrier shelter being built, right? If they choose not to go there because they don't want treatment or for whatever reason, now they have the obligation to be arrested. That's kind of like a catch-22 for a homeless individual.
All right, well, let's stick with the issue of homelessness for a moment, candidates. What are the most pressing priorities to curbing homelessness in your view? Ronnie Cruz, you are the creator of Feed It Forward. You hand out hundreds of Thanksgiving meals to those in need every year on Thanksgiving. So let's start with you. What are the most pressing priorities to curbing homelessness? 60 seconds, sir.
Well, we need to create more jobs. And when I say create more jobs, I've been doing that. Here in Bakersfield, I just hired 20 more people as contractors for the railroad. And in Fresno, I hired 15. Before I even hired the homeless people, as long as they don't have a record, we can hire them because it's government. They got to pass a background and get a TWIC card. But if you give them a job, like if you teach a man to fish and you give them a job, then they know how to take care of themselves, and then we need just more shelter for them so they could have a sense of pride. Like this, where they hire them at the homeless shelter, I think that's a really great that they're out there cleaning the roads and freeways. It's outstanding.
All right, so Mr. Abbasi, you heard Mr. Cruz, what he said. Your take.
I agree with Ronnie. We need to create more opportunities and jobs. Unfortunately, our current incumbent and the rest of the board hasn't done that. And no current official has mentioned any permanent solutions to date, nothing, as far as creating permanent housing. The temporary barriers and temporary shelters are the first step, but they are very expensive to maintain. We actually need to build permanent housing so that we can transition those folks into those homes with their own leases. With the housing first approach, again, it's been more effective. It's proven to work in other cities and counties, and I have no idea why it's not being implemented here.
All right, Mr. Valdes.
Like I said at the last forum that we did, I'm a very proponent of housing first. They had great success in Sweden. I've mentioned that before. That is the first step to do. It's easier for you to keep a job when you have a roof over your head. It's just that simple. However, when we look at the homeless situation, we have individuals that are usually plagued by addiction, poverty, or sometimes just having a really bad run of luck. So what we need to do is approach these things with a proven strategy that have actually worked before in the past. We can't keep on just building these barriers because it's like putting a bandage on a gaping wound. It's not going to do anything. So what we need to do is really be ahead of this curve, because if not, we're going to end up like San Francisco or Los Angeles, and the problem's going to be so bad at that point, we're not going to know what to do.
Thank you. Dr. Herrera.
As I mentioned earlier, Mr. Wallace, is that this is going to take community-wide effort in order to solve it. It's a crisis. The 5 board of supervisors will not be able to solve the homeless crisis. And that might sound cruel to say this to the public, but it's going to take a community effort. We need the nonprofits, we need churches to come in and work hand in hand with us at the board of supervisors to help us solve this issue, because we need more affordable housing, as Mr. Cruz mentioned too, jobs, but not just any type of job. You need quality jobs, $50,000, $60,000 a year job with health benefits where you can take care of your family and you don't end up on the streets. And as Mr. Abbasi has mentioned earlier, if you're a county employee, you haven't received a raise in years, you're only a couple of paychecks away from ending on the streets. And we saw that in 2018 when we had the federal government shutdown, where we saw federal employees having to go to food pantries because they couldn't make ends meet. So yeah, we need jobs, but we need quality jobs, not just your local fast food industry kind of jobs, or else you'll be on the streets.
All right, gentlemen, it's time to take a break, and you are watching a live debate here featuring 4 of the 5 candidates for 5th District Kern County Supervisor. We're back with more after the break.
Welcome back to the debate featuring the 4 of the 5 candidates for 5th District Supervisor. Incumbent Leticia Perez made a commitment to be here. She let us know she would be here, but tonight she did not fulfill that commitment. She has decided not to show, and we do not have any reasonable explanation. We don't have any explanation at all, I should say, as to why she is not here.
Indeed we don't.
Indeed we don't. So with that, we're going to begin the second half of the debate with the following questions. What would you ask Supervisor Perez if she were here tonight? Mr. Abbasi, we're going to begin with you.
I would ask her what she's going to do after she loses the election.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Cruz.
I wouldn't ask her nothing. I would say, you know what, you have no honor and no integrity, and that's how I would.
All right, that's it. Dr. Herrera.
I would ask her why did in the fall of 2018 she, along with her 4 colleagues on the board of supervisors, raise her hand to vote to give the richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, a $3 million tax rebate when
Okay.
we see so many problems in this county.
Thank you.
I would ask to the extent of to how much of the money that she forgot to report. I think it's very important. I think a lot of us are new to politics here, and I know that for a fact that you have 24 hours to report any check that you get. So it's hard for me to believe that how could you forget to report a check that you received from individuals within 24 hours? You've been in office for 8 years. Bad memory.
All right, well, we're going to kind of flip the question around right now. I also want to ask candidates, if she were here tonight, what do you think she would ask you? Mr. Valdes, we'll start with you.
It's a good question. I can't speak for her. I think I would hope that she would just defend herself, because I think the voters deserve an honest answer from her finally. They need to know why she decided to get involved with these public interest groups, and why, basically, why she sold our vote. The 5th District's not for sale anymore, and that's what we need to drive home.
Thank you. Dr. Herrera.
I think the classic cliche question that you would probably ask me is, why are you running? Do you have the experience, right? Do you have the experience to actually to be in this position? And my classic response would be is, oftentimes experience in politics doesn't necessarily yield the best candidate. So yeah, my life experiences I think will qualify me to be on the board of supervisors. But that's a hypothetical. I mean, we don't know what you would ask.
Right. Mr. Cruz.
She would probably ask me, Ronnie, how do we curtail gang violence? I know you worked before for that in East Los Angeles. Can you help me? Can you really help me help the people out there to stop the homicides? And then she would probably ask me, well, since you're an operation manager, how do I budget? How do I keep the overtime down? How do I manage people? How do you manage all the departments? How do you go in there and audit? How do you go keep the human services to provide the best quality to the constituents so they don't badmouth them or give them a hard time or make them wait in line for 5 hours for food stamps where they're human beings? They should just be getting it. That's what she would ask.
Mr. Abbasi, what would she ask you?
Well, if Supervisor Perez were here, we would hear a lot of flowery and empty words with no real substance. She's a typical politician, and we'd hear just more of the same political speak, her repeating herself, and ultimately we need genuine people, again, to run for office, not phony politicians.
All right. Dr. Herrera, you touched on it. You disapprove of that $3 million tax rebate the county gave Amazon as an enticement to locate its fulfillment center near the airport. That was a unanimous vote by the board. Why do you object to that, sir?
I think it's immoral, it's unethical, it's unprofessional. The county's struggling financially. If you truly believe in laissez-faire capitalism, you know the government has to have no role whatsoever in trying to bring industry into a community, whether it's a city, county, or state. Our job as supervisors is just to lay the foundation, have the proper lighting, the proper roads and bridges, and then let these individuals, multi-billionaires, come in and let them risk their own money. What Tim Cook at Apple did, where he says, we're going to build our headquarters up in the Bay Area for $5 without asking any government subsidies. And I think that's what the 5 board of supervisors should have told Bezos. Say, you want to be here? We got the land, we got the opportunity. You build it. We're not going to give you any subsidy. And it gets worse too, because they also gave Laurel, the company out there at the Home Ranch, another $1 million tax rebate. So it's like the county's trying to give these people left and right billionaires money that we don't have, and yet they turn around and say we don't have money to help the homeless in this community.
If I could follow up there,
Yeah.
do you think it's not worth it that the county gave that tax rebate in light of the jobs that fulfillment center will create?
No, absolutely not. Because I truly believe that the government has to have no role whatsoever in bringing these industries into the community. Like I mentioned earlier, it should be their own initiative, and they should be coming out on their own. Our job is to provide the safe schools for their, if they hire so many people. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, they said that he needed to hire 1,000 jobs, and he needs to pay a certain amount of wage, like $31,000 a year. I mean, I'm in the private industry myself, business owner. I don't want the government to come and tell me this is how much you need to pay a certain employee, how many employees you're supposed to have. We won't off our backs as business owners.
All right, Ben Valdes, what do you think about the
I
tax
think it's
rebate?
interesting. I think it's really interesting that we're sitting here saying how bad we need jobs in the 5th District, but we're talking about being mad about a tax incentive that's going to bring hundreds, possibly thousands of jobs to this district. If we need anybody to be employed, it's the people in the 5th district. Amazon is going to be a marvelous thing for this county. So that investment, that tax incentive, that's great. We also have opportunity zones here in the 5th district, 55 of them actually in Kern County that we don't even utilize. Why? I don't know. It's a good question to ask Supervisor Perez, because that would bring outside investors to come in and invest here. It's like a 1031 exchange, but on steroids. It would benefit our community with these opportunity funds. Why aren't we using them? I don't know. But there's so many different ways that we can generate revenue for this county, and Amazon is really big, and it's going to provide a lot of jobs for people. So why can't we be mad about that? Because we want to say that people are unemployed. Why are we going to prevent them from getting jobs?
Mr. Cruz, how do you feel about that?
Well, I condone their actions, giving them a break, because I've seen their warehouses in operations, and they employ over 1,000 people. You don't need a high school diploma to go deliver their packages. The only thing they have to do is deliver like 350 packages a day, which is kind of rough. But it would create a lot of jobs. With the jobs, it builds infrastructure. They buy off the 99-cent stores. They go to the John's Burgers. It builds, and that was a good idea. Or they could have blown it like in New York City when they lost all them jobs because some people decided to protest.
And Mr. Abbasi?
Well, Jim, I think it's great that we have some new opportunities presenting itself and coming to Bakersfield, to Kern County. However, I don't think that tax rebate was necessary. I think that we are geographically situated where a lot of companies want to be here in Kern County because of where we are located, north and south. But also, it's not all that it's cracked up to be. A lot of these jobs are going to be ending up to be automated. So although it sounds like it's going to be a huge boon, it's not enough. And we need to do more to create more jobs and bring new development and more development and jobs to Kern County.
All right, well, that dovetails into the next question. The oil and agriculture industries historically have been the pillars of our economy. We all know that. Now the argument could be made that both industries face turbulent times ahead. We have California's green agenda, we have the fight against global warming, and we have restrictions on groundwater pumping coming for our ag industry. So in light of that, what strategy would you pursue? And let's not just talk about creating more jobs, let's talk specifics. Do you have specific ideas about how we transition our economy here in Kern County away from those two pillars of our economy? Let me start with you, Dr. Herrera.
Well, I don't want us here in Kern County to end up what we saw like in West Virginia. I remember in 2008 when John McCain went there before, he was running for president, and he told a coal miner, I'm sorry, my friend, but your job's not coming back. When that man said, what's happening to our job? Are you going to promise? We got to be straightforward with our constituents. A lot of these jobs that are heavily dependent on the oil industry, they're going to be archaic pretty soon. Whether we like it or not, we have to transition into the green jobs, into the solar, wind, energy jobs that are coming down the road. So in that sense, I would agree with the moratorium that Governor Newsom put on our side, but rather than try to fight Newsom like the 5 board supervisors are trying to do, let's go out there, Sacramento, let's try to find a middle ground in which we do a transition into the new economy. And yeah, it might be painful, but in the long term, that's what's going to benefit the county of Kern, because we're going to have a better quality of life. We're going to be able to breathe better.
All right. Mr. Cruz, how do we transition? What new industries do we need to bring in to balance the decline, the anticipated decline in the oil and ag industries?
Well, we need more solar, wind power. We need scientists to develop some other form of energy where it doesn't destroy the environment. But we really need the oil companies. I have a lot of oil-friendly workers, and we can transition, but slowly. We don't want them to become homeless like the coal miners.
Mr. Valdes?
Well, the truth is that oil is our lifeline here. It's our blood. Any time that we can think about taking away oil, it would be economic travesty here. So what we need to do, though, however, oil is a natural resource. Natural resources will eventually run out. So what we need to do, whether it's today or 50 years from now, we need to prepare for that. And we need to be ahead of the game by preparing for these solar. We are on the cutting edge of energy here in agriculture. There's no reason why we should be on the cutting edge providing jobs and training, especially to the younger kids now. STEM programs, so that they're prepared for when these natural resources start to deplete, when they're done. Because whether we like it or not, it's eventually going to go. But man, we can keep oil as long as we can, of course. It's our lifeline here. But to think that it's going to last forever, it's not. And we have to start that transition now, because imagine if it stops then, all of a sudden we had no plan, we're done. We got to be prepared. Stay ahead of the game.
Mr. Abbasi.
Jim, one of the things we need to do is to stop giving contracts to outside interests. We're losing a lot of local jobs, and local employers and employees aren't getting these jobs. So we need to stop outsourcing. That's one of the things we need to do. And there needs to be more done to bring new industry here. We need to bring the tech companies, the specialty companies, even medical cannabis can be a new industry here. And so, you know, these are all jobs and these are all things that we should be doing, but the County Board of Supervisors, here it's mostly monopolies. Opportunities are not, mom and pops don't get the jobs, the opportunities. It's mostly outsourced. So that's one of the things that we need to do. And no matter what the Sacramento does, no amount of education or oil permits is going to help us, because jobs will continue to be lost regardless of what Sacramento does. And we need to help these employees transition. We need to create a safety net for oil workers, work with the oil companies and legislators to make sure that they have you know, basic needs met and financial security.
Very good, sir.
All right, let's talk the county budget for a moment. Recent budget discussions by the Board of Supervisors revealed tax revenues to the county are stagnant. So the costs of public employee pensions and social programs continue to rise. County workers are clamoring for raises, and public safety is stretched thin. Candidates, are any of you in favor of putting a 1-cent sales tax on the ballot this November to help shore up the county's fiscal condition? Dr. Herrera, begin with you.
I would not put a 1 cent on the ballot. I would let the voters decide that. I think it's up to them to decide if they want to tax themselves higher. I don't think we should be, you know, dictating whether we want to tax them or not. But it is true. The county, it's stagnant. We haven't seen much job growth, and the employees haven't had a raise, as was mentioned earlier. And so it is important that we give them the raises that they need too. But beyond just talking about raising taxes, we need to have more accountability, because we need to know. You read in the LA Times, and it's embarrassing to see an outside paper telling us that we have some county firefighters making over $300,000 a year, the battalion chiefs, and we see that left and right with so many different positions. So let's look at there with the microscope. Let's cut the waste and use that money to give the county employees the raise that they deserve for over 10 years, as Mr. Abbasi has mentioned. But it's about accountability and going in with getting maybe a new company to do an audit for the county.
Thank you. Mr. Cruz.
Well, I'm not for no new taxes. And what we got to do with the county is go into each one of the departments and see what's going on. I've seen them driving around in brand new Sonatas, and then all these lawsuits that they bring against the county. We could use that money to be giving raises to the law enforcement. The sheriffs need the detention officers, they need a raise. We have too many lawsuits going on where we could use that money to benefit even the homeless community, or we can use that money to build different things for like clinics or outpatient clinics for the drug addicts, or we need prevention programs instead of suing them for where they made that mistake for the cutting down the $2 billion worth of marijuana, and now they're going to have a lawsuit on that. We could have used that money to pay them officers that went and destroyed it.
All right, Mr. Abbasi.
No taxes. We are being taxed to death. It's not fair that we should carry the burden of our negligent supervisors and leadership. Their wasteful spending, their negligence, their litigious behavior. Of course, like Ronnie said, we're losing millions of dollars on losing cases, but the Board of Supervisors continues to engage in this litigious behavior because they don't care. It's taxpayer money. So they figure they're just going to get unlimited resources and they can fight every losing case, which literally costs us, the taxpayers, millions of dollars. So one of the things I'm going to do as supervisor is reduce the waste, stop the litigation and lawsuits, and start trimming our budget where it's possible. But also, we can balance the KCERA main pension fund with the SRBR supplemental fund in a way that sustains long-term benefits. We can give an additional pension benefit to our retired employees and give raises to the service employees They just haven't done it yet. They want us to rely on us, the taxpayer, to bail them out. And I say no new taxes.
All right, and Mr. Valdes.
I don't agree with taxes. I mean, I don't agree with any tax on 1% tax. We work hard for money. We need to keep the most money that we work for. We work hard for it, correct? But what I hear here tonight is a lot of pointing the finger at the board. The board this, the board that. That's not what leaders do. I can tell you what I'm going to do. That's what we need to do, is we need to start addressing these issues. Come up with plans. Quit pointing the finger at everybody else and saying it's not that way because of this. What are you going to do to fix it? Don't tell me what the problem is. Tell me how you're going to fix it. I think that's what a lot of times we want to point the finger at everybody else when we need to take initiative and get things done. So when we think about tax, the only way I would ever impose a tax is if it was at the will of the people and there was a tax protection for the taxpayer, which means that we would have like what we would call a go and flow. So we see where the money goes in and how it flows out. That's the way we need to do it. Only if there's a tax protection and it's at the will of the people.
All right, gentlemen, let's switch gears here and let's let you talk about yourselves for a moment. Talk to us and talk to the viewers out there about the personal skill sets that you bring to the table that would make you an effective leader with the Board of Supervisors. Personal skill set and how that would help the people of Kern County and how it would help the board get things done. Mr. Cruz, what is your personal skill set that you find advantageous in that vein?
I bring a lot of knowledge of having a real job and working for the media. The Spanish newspaper, we do a lot for the Hispanic community and all communities. And I would, I got a little bit, well, first of all, I know how to run budgets because I was in charge of $20 million trains to make sure they got there on time. I was in charge of the overtime and fixing the overtime to get it from maybe 20% down to 3%. I was in charge of dealing with the unions and negotiating. So I'm really experienced on how to negotiate with the unions from the county and to get things done to compromise and all come together as one unit and not fight against each other.
Mr. Abbasi, your personal skill set.
Well, Jim, as you know, I have been able to navigate all sorts of extraordinary challenges that the county continues to throw at me. As an entrepreneur and businessman, I gained valuable experience managing. As a coordinator, I managed large groups of people, and this will make me an asset as supervisor. I'm also analytical and intelligent and creative, so I can find solutions that will actually work and that will actually provide some sort of benefit for the community, for the county of Kern. I also have a harder working ethic than the incumbent. I believe in working more than 5 days a month. I'll be working 5 days a week at minimum to be able to serve my constituents and doing their job, doing their bidding, and doing my job effectively. So I think voters should really consider giving me their vote because I have that experience, I have that intelligence, and I think that I'm the best qualified candidate for the position.
All right, 1 minute, Mr. Valdes, to explain your personal skill set
Well,
and
Jim,
how it would serve the people of Kern County well.
I resonate with my people in the 5th District, and I'll tell you why. I grew up in one of the rough neighborhoods in our 5th District. I know what it's like to go through the struggle there. I resonate with them because I understand that we have problems there that are deeper than anything we can touch on here tonight. We have people that are going homeless. Literally, in days from now, they're going to go homeless. So what are we going to do to help them? We need somebody that's able to communicate with them because I understand and I'm compassionate about that. But I'm also understanding that I work every day as a realtor and I'm honored every day that I have clients trusting me to not only negotiate on their behalf, to not only oversee their contracts, but they trusted me to assist them in one of the biggest transactions ever made in their life. So I've come a long way from where I came from. So I know both sides of it. I understand finance, and I think it's important to work on both sides of the aisle politically to get anything done. And that's how I think I would work well with.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Herrera.
I think in contrast to the other three candidates here on stage, and the only commonality that I would say that I have with the incumbent is that I'm the only one who's an elected official. I had to go out there and campaign to get on the Greenfield Union School Board of Trustees. And once I won that election, I'm held accountable by the voters. I oversee a budget with my superintendent of nearly over $130 million. I have to negotiate contracts with the unions, with the teachers' union, for classified employees, for certificated employees, and I see their struggles too, the pensions, we have to negotiate with them too. And so I also have to work with people, on my colleagues on the board who are Republicans, who are Democrats, and I cannot be a political ideologue and just be stubborn. I have to find common ground in order reach a solution that benefits not so much even the teachers themselves, but in the end, the students themselves, nearly 10,000 at the Greenfield Union School District.
All right, thank you. So now we're running out of time, so I want to get to our last question, candidates. If elected, what is job one for you as 5th District Supervisor? Dr. Herrera, 30 seconds because we're running out of time.
Pay cuts. I think too many of the administrators are making too much money in this county, and we need to start making some pay cuts. If the voters read my candidate's statement, they'll read that I propose a 15% across the board pay cut for our administrators. Moreover, I also propose, as Mr. Valdes had mentioned, term limits for the Board of Supervisors too. 2 terms and you're out. I don't want to enrich myself or any on the taxpayers' dime, so it's important that we put some regulations on how much time we can serve and do some pay cuts and use that money to help the people at the bottom.
Thank you. Mr. Cruz.
My number one thing would be to create a youth gang prevention program to save lives. If I save one life, mission complete. There's no money value that you could put on a human life, and there's too many human lives being wasted here in the 5th District.
Mr. Abbasi.
Eitan, the first thing I would do when elected is order some investigations on certain department heads and officials from day one, first thing. Then I would address the long list of priorities that I have that include homelessness, crime, jobs and employees, as well as healthcare. Those are the 4 main priorities, but it's a very long list that I'm going to get into when I am elected.
Okay, Mr. Valdes.
Eitan, I think what's very important to me is that I would like to see an employment training resource center in the heart of Niles Street. We have a lot of people that don't have transportation to get jobs, and it shouldn't be a job to try to find a job. So I would like to see something like that develop immediately. I would also like to start to clean up a lot of the mess that we've already had. I've met constituents recently where I'm able to go to their homes, and they're nice neighborhoods, and what happens is you can't walk out further than 5 feet and see graffiti everywhere. And they're tired of calling, and they're tired of leaving messages and never getting returned back. And that's why I'm running, because I'm running for those kind of reasons, because I'm passionate about my community and I care about my community.
All right, candidates, it's come time for closing statements. I imagine you all feel somewhat cheated by the absence of the incumbent here. I'm sure you wanted to debate her on the issues, but it's not happening, did not happen. So we will go with closing statements here. 30 seconds, please, gentlemen, for your closing statements, and we'll start with Dr. Herrera.
Well, I want to tell the voters that this time around, in comparison to 2016, you do have a choice. There's obviously 4 other candidates here on stage which you can choose from. I feel that I'm the best candidate because I have that elected official experience. I oversee a huge budget of over $120 million. I want to bring economic development, but fair one, not where the Board of Supervisors dictates who wins and who loses, who gets a tax rebate, who doesn't. And I want to work hard to get to give pay increases to those employees that actually deserve it, who've been working hard and haven't had a raise in years.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Valdes, closing statement, please.
Being an elected official is a big honor. It's an honor that requires transparency, integrity, and honesty. The people of the 5th District deserve representation that finally doesn't have to question whether or not their supervisor is representing them to the fullest capacity. They shouldn't have to worry about if their supervisor is actually having any kind of outside financial influence that's affecting their opinion at the county level. They shouldn't have to wonder if their county supervisor is fighting for them day in and day out to make their lives better, for the working class people, for all the families that make our community so great. So I think if I'm elected, I want you guys to know that your days of wondering are over.
All right. Mr. Cruz, closing statement, please, sir.
I would consider it an honor for everybody in the 5th District to vote for me, because I will get things done. For 18 years, I've been helping the people on my own. I have a little board, but it's a grassroots campaign, and I would do my best. I would be at work every day. You could check the cameras in the county building to see that I show up every day. I'll be there from 8 to 4 o'clock, maybe take a half-hour lunch. But anybody who calls the office, my office, I will answer and look into their problems. I would treat everything with a sense of urgency.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Abbasi, closing statement, please, 30 seconds.
Well, unlike the incumbent, I won't take bribes or extort people. Unlike Ben Valdes, I don't have local leaders encouraging me to run for office. It's no secret that we have a lot of corruption here in Kern County, and we need to take it more seriously. one of the things that I wanted to mention in my closing comments is
15 seconds, sir, please.
closing comments. I am at the closing comments, right? That we just need to do more to ensure the integrity of our election process too. That's right. Our a registrar of voters recently was retired. Turns out she was fired. We should all be concerned about our election integrity.
Do I get my rebuttal?
No, we're at closing statements. No
Oh.
rebuttals for closing statements. I'm sorry, Mr. Valdes. Gentlemen, thank you very much. We want to mention also to our viewers, to win this race outright, a candidate will have to win a simple majority of the votes. That's 50% plus one. If that doesn't happen, then the two top vote getters advance to a runoff in November.
And a reminder to our viewers, you saw that tonight that Supervisor Perez was not here. She committed to us that she would be here, and we do not know why she's not here. But Ben Valdes, Ricardo Herrera, Ronnie Cruz, and David Abbasi, best of luck to you in your respective campaigns, and thank you for your time. And to our viewers, we thank you for tuning in. As always, this is brought as a public service to you. We hope you make an informed decision this election day. That's March 3rd, this Tuesday. For Jim Scott, I'm Eitan Wallace, and for everybody here at KGET 17, so long and have a good night.
Sponsored by Bakersfield Pest Control. This debate has been a public service of KGET TV and 17 News, your local election headquarters.